Well, hello. Welcome once again to 25 o'clock. I'm your host, Dan Drago. Greetings, hello, happy day of the week that you are listening to this on. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. I always appreciate it. Makes me feel like I'm not just talking to the walls of the secret sub-basement here in 25 o'clock land. Anyway, welcome. Thank you all for being here on the program this week. Drew Nugent of Drew Nugent and the Midnight Society. He is a Philadelphia mainstay. He's been around for 7 or 8 years doing music, and it was really, really great to sit down and talk with him. Our paths have crossed multiple times throughout the past several years. It was great to get him in, and I happened to sit down with him on the auspicious occasion of it being his 30th birthday. So that was also really cool, too. Anyway, we are going to talk about Drew more in just a minute. Going to bring you up to speed of all things in 25 o'clock land. Speaking of which, I alluded last week, it was my 35th birthday on September 30th. And I got to tell you, it passed so quickly that I barely had time to comment on it or ruminate on it at all. And I think that life is still continuing to pass so quickly that I haven't been able to do any of those things. Ruminate, think about it at all. I do know that I enjoy being in my 30s, and I enjoy a lot of things. It's odd. For those younger than, I don't know. I don't know why I pick 30 as such a milestone cutoff, probably because it's the closest milestone that I can relate to at this exact time. But before you're 30, I feel like you give birthdays a lot more, just a lot more room to exist. And I certainly did. And then once I got past 30 was a big one, obviously. And then when I got past 30, 31, 32, it stopped meaning so much, not out of being grumpy or cranky or, oh, I'm getting older, I don't want to think about it. But it's just so hard as you move on in age to really stop for even a few seconds and like take a moment and be like, hey, I have been on Earth for 35 years and I am not dead and things seem to be going okay. So, not saying we have to have a national holiday about that, but, stop. Acknowledge it. Acknowledge it any day. It doesn't have to be your birthday. Just stop on any day and just be like, I'm alive. Everything seems to be okay. And boom, done. Moving on. I guess that's my message that I give to you all from the wise old age of 35. Yes, I am full of it. Yes. Anyway, let's talk about Drew for a second here. Drew Nugent on the program, as I said before. He is how do you describe Drew Nugent? He is a jazz piano player, but that could mean a whole host of things right there. But Drew specializes in the jazz age era of jazz music. So this is the late teens into the 20s into maybe the very early 30s. It's before the swing era. But after the sort of like proto-jazz era, I don't know. I'm sure it's all explained really well in Ken Burns's 900-part documentary on jazz, which Drew and I do talk about briefly on the program. But if you want to know more about Drew Nugent, if you're not already familiar, go to drewnugent.com. And you can read all about his dates. You can connect to his Facebook and his Twitter. And if you're on YouTube, I highly suggest looking up Drew Nugent because it's one thing to hear the music, but just to see the man, because he really physically embodies a 1920s era jazz band leader. He really does. It's always been a treat to see him play. It's always been just extraordinary to watch him work live. We mentioned this in the conversation as well. It's not just a boring, stodgy, like almost school-like experience of here is some old jazz and now you must enjoy it. They really make it fun. They really make a show out of it. Him and his band. He talks about his band. I kind of made the final connection with Drew to get him on the show through Dan Nugent, who was back on an episode, I think it was episode 10. Yeah, I think Dan Nugent was episode 10. He plays all around too, and he was in Drew's band He subs in Drew's band, and I ran into Dan at a Drew Nugent Midnight Society show that I was working. And that's how I kind of reconnected with Dan and had him on the show back on episode 10. And we even talked back on episode 10 about how I would like to have Drew on the show. So here we are later, episode 27, Drew Nugent. That's the story of how we got to where we are right now. Other things before we get going with the conversation. If you are in New York City and you know me, or you want to know me, I will be in New York City this coming weekend. It started as just going to be sort of an under-the-radar, quiet little getaway weekend with me and Mrs. 25 O'Clock. But then I realized it was CMJ that weekend as well in New York City. If for those of you who don't know, CMJ is College Music Journal, which is sort of the Billboard charts of indie rock and college radio. I was involved heavily in it when I was in college radio as a college student. I haven't been involved in a CMJ related thing since probably 1999. So yeah, I got that going for me. But anyway, I am going to probably be popping into the Outlaw Roadshow showcase at the Bowery Electric in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. It's at 327 Bowery. It runs all week. Here's how you get into it. You don't need to pay money, I'm pretty sure. And you don't have to register to be part of the whole CMJ thing. I know that's a whole badge, and it costs a lot of money for just a regular person off the street to go to all these showcases. But you can go to the Outlaw Roadshow showcase. If you download their app, just go to whatever your app provider is and download the app, the Outlaw Roadshow app. It gives you the whole schedule of events, everyone who's going to play, and they're going to send you out a code, and that code will get you in. As far as I know, I'll be there Friday the 16th and Saturday the 17th hanging out. So, hey, if you're in New York and you like great music, roots music, alt country music, and other kinds of music as well, go to the Outlaw Roadshow Showcase. Ryan of Ryan's Smashing Life, which is a website out of Boston, which champions a lot of great Boston music. He's one of the guys putting on this show, and also Adam Duritz, frontman of the Counting Crows, is also another guy who is putting on this showcase. They curate an excellent list of bands. If you're in New York, go to it. Outlaw Roadshow Showcase, Bowery Electric, all this week starting Thursday in New York City. That's enough out of me. That's enough shilling out of me. That's enough me broadcasting my vacation plans to you so you may stalk me. I don't think I have enough listeners to have stalkers. I think there's a certain percentage you have to hit. There's a certain percentage that you can gain if you have a certain amount of listeners, and then like X percentage of them would be stalkers. But I don't know if we're there yet. Maybe we are. This is a terrible thing to want. Anyway, let's get on with the show. Let's go check out my conversation with Drew Nugent here on 25 O'Clock.
It's just too much. It's so cool. It's got a fully functioning brick fireplace. Like it looks kind of like the subway station. You got the subway tiles and this slate everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a very different looking basement than I'm used to.
Well, it speaks to, in a lot of ways, it speaks to your aesthetic.
I would agree with that for sure.
Yeah. Your aesthetic. The first thing I gotta wonder about you. I've known of you for a while. I think I first ran into you at a farmer, like old farmer's cabinet gig or something like that. I think I was across the street at like some other bar, and I went out for a smoke, and I heard this music across the street, and I was like, oh, what's going on over there? And it was so clean, I thought it was a recording, so I kind of poked my head in. It was you. I think maybe even Dan Nishaney was possibly like backing you up that night.
You never know. Actually, no, I don't think...
This would have been like maybe 2009, 2010?
Oh, it probably would have been... Well, no, it would have been about 11 because the Farmers didn't open until 2011.
You're right.
So
gosh, it is 2015 already now that I think about it.
But
I remember walking in over there and hearing the music and just the ambience of the place. I mean, and I've said this before with Dan, say what you will about whatever ended up happening to that place. Like the ambience of that place when it was kicking was like, it was beautiful. Beautiful space.
At the height of its career, that place was just, it was a real, it was considered like one of the Philadelphia night spots, and a lot of people knew about it. And like you said, say what you want, but you can't take away the fact that it was possibly one of the most happening joints in Philly. I'm so proud to say that I was a part of it.
Yeah, and what you were doing just fit perfectly in there. A lot of candlelight, a lot of wood. They had that big curtain between like the bar and the rest of the place. I remember wandering in, and you hit set break. And I've been a touring musician for a long time. I typically don't bug people in the midst of a show. In the midst of a show, but I knew I was going to go back across the street and see my friends. And so like I walked up to you and I said like, "Hey, you're awesome. I love what you're doing." You handed me a card, like that little round, round card,
78 label, or 78 RPM card.
Yeah, which 4 years later when I met you again, you handed me the same card,
which is awesome. I mean, it's slight updates on it, but that's it.
Yeah. So, and I was just blown away. I knew music like that existed. I just didn't think anyone was playing it. More that even just someone my age, is it someone like of my generation was even playing that. Where did the interest and love for like this earlier 20th century style of jazz? We're talking like pre-swing era, right?
Yeah, definitely pre-swing era. They definitely called it swinging music. I mean, there's a huge difference between swinging music and swing, and. But what really drew me to it initially was that I was into ragtime initially, and before that I grew up on everything, like huge Beatles phases, everything from the Four Tops to Bowie and then some. It was just like, my two favorite songs at age 3 were Ground Control to Major Tom and Sugar Pie Honey Bunch, so you do the math. I just grew up on music, and I loved music. My parents always were just showing me and my sister good music, and then eventually I heard ragtime, and I was just really drawn to that. And then from there I heard the earliest of jazz, and the stride piano music and the original records from like the 20s and early 30s of Louis Armstrong and so many other greats that I would have never even heard of had I not heard of Louis Armstrong and this Ken Burns jazz series. And that really helped me, especially was watching the Ken Burns jazz series. For some reason, I just got stuck on the first few episodes.
Yeah, me too. That was definitely, I remember seeing that on PBS and watching it, like, what was it, like they'd show them like one every day, or like one every couple of days or something like that.
And they kept rerunning them for like weeks.
Yeah, so like you'd always catch up. Yeah. I remember getting stuck I got stuck probably on the middle. I probably got stuck on like the 40s and 50s and the bop and all that. But the one thing I always loved about those first couple episodes of Ken Burns jazz, which even at a younger age when I saw it, it was really hammered in me. It was just like, this is dance music. Like later on we would accept jazz as like this heady intellectual thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like when you look at particularly your era of jazz, like it was entertainment. It was dance music. There was no recorded music wasn't even really a huge thing yet.
Well, actually, that was the thing. Was recorded music was getting big. It was in jazz music of all idioms, pretty much followed the evolution of the record, including you look at the first records that are coming out in the late 1800s. Very primitive records, like that was when they were not popular really, like they were just like a folly. It's like when the first picture show came out, it's like put
it on at parties to amuse your friends.
Yeah, exactly. To show off how much money you had, kind of a deal. That was what you did. But then by the turn of the century, Edison and all these other companies are getting involved and getting their hands on it. To make a long story short, boom, you got the quote unquote modern recording industry. And then you got Victor City over here in Camden that during the 20s was by far one of the most prolific grounds of recording. Everybody from Bix to Duke Ellington and Jelly Roll Morton, Louis Armstrong, Fats.
A couple of those rooms are still kicking around over there. There's like an old church room over there that they used to use.
The church is still there. The church was, oddly enough, it was very briefly a church in its life as a church in the turn of the century, and then was almost instantly bought by Victor to be a recording studio.
Because they had like the big, almost long cavernous space, and they would just...
You could hear it in the Louis Armstrong and Fats. Every record that was done there, you can almost tell because they used that same piano every record. They had this one grand piano. Maybe I just got tinnitus and I'm starting to hear weird things, even more so than usual. But I swear on all the records I have that were recorded in that church, that piano, I swear, I mean, don't get me wrong, every player on it, like James P. to Jelly Roll and Duke and then some, yeah, they made it sound different. Same thing with Fats, but you could tell it was that same piano.
Had just certain jangle.
Had a certain shimmer to the notes on it.
And the room, too, and the tone of the room and the shape of the room.
Fats recorded on that organ.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. The recording, but to go back to what we were saying, though, is the recording was really fun, and so was film. The Soundies, they used us as the first subjects, the musicians and dance bands like Ben Burney and his orchestra. They did the first recording ever that featured a jazz saxophone soloist.
Well, I mean, it was all marching. I mean, you want to go back even farther. There's just all marching band music with a bit of a kick to it once you got to it. I remember that from the first episode of Ken Burns, where it was like all marches, and then they showed you how like the New Orleans guys like.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would say that in the very early days, but when you got to the 20s, which to me was the real realm of jazz.
And that's your realm, right? You pretty much occupy.
Yeah, mostly we stick around, late teens to mid 30s on a general span, but most of our core of our material does center from like the I'd say mid 1920s to the mid 1930s. It really doesn't. Even that is wrong because we collect so much material. Like I could say that this week, and then next week we're playing shit from the late teens to the early 20s. So it's all. I think it's all like what we're feeling at the time.
Well, let's. I mean, how does someone of our generation get so? I mean, it's one thing to appreciate this music. And I know a lot of people who appreciate, older, early 20th century jazz. And it's another thing to like just completely embody it, that's my estimation. Whenever I think of you, I think I'm like that guy embodies jazz, like classic jazz age era combos, stuff like that. So like, when did you hear it for the first time? Maybe not even just when did you hear it for the first time, but when did you hear it for the first time where it grabbed you in a way where you're like, that, I want to do that?
Well, that really, I mean, I put a lot of personal loving blame on Louis Armstrong, and that he was such an infectious figure in my, just influential, like seriously, it was when I was dealing with like issues of adolescence and, all these hormones, testosterones, and it's like it's hard being a teenager, and you have to find certain things to. I mean, especially when you're a kook like me, you need to find things that are going to kind of balance you, more so than the Ritalin and all that crap. But my mother and father were so supportive of whatever struck my fancy, aside from like blowing up bridges and shit. But they were very like pushing me towards doing, expressing myself and whatever I wanted to do. If I wanted to play an instrument, they were going to help me get the training. And if I wanted to, I was doing visual art for a while, so they were getting me some help with that as well, and vice versa. I mean, I'm trailing off here.
No, it's when did you? So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Bluebell, out in the burbs.
Oh, okay.
Born in Chestnut Hill, and my family had pretty much moved from Philly out to the burbs. The whole family, an extended family, and yeah.
Now you had said that your parents were like turning you and your sister onto a lot of music. What kind of music get played in the house?
My mom loves Barry White, amongst other things. I mean, amongst other artists. I mean, my mom seriously loves like classic black artists. And
a lot of old soul and R&B.
Yeah, love soul, R&B. Like,
Philly was a good place to be influenced by that too.
My dad's the same way, and they also love like they love tons of different rock bands. Like for us, it was really weird. Like when we were in the car. I mean, this is weird. Like when I would go to elementary school, middle school, the grade schools. also going to just driving in my mom and dad's car. We, a lot of times, like Oldies 98 was on when Oldies 98 was still good. Sorry, Oldies 98. But same thing with MGK, like before it became like 70s, 80s Central. And it's just like, don't get me wrong, I could dig on some 70s and early 80s and some 80s stuff, but I'm really more of a late 50s to early 70s.
You're more of a pop guy.
Yeah, but I love soul.
Or in like early like rock and roll, when like the line between rock and roll and rhythm and blues was
also
a lot
the British
tighter.
Invasion.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'm a huge
Kinks,
British...
Yardbirds, and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Almost. I mean, there really wasn't a band I didn't like. I remember my dad did not like Kirby Puckett. Every time that came on, my dad would mumble and be like, "Oh, goddamn Kirby Puckett," and change
Kirby
the channel.
Puckett or Gary Puckett?
Gary Puckett. I always forget. There's some dumb name that I'm like, God, what an awful name. Like Gary Puckett, they used to wear those silly, those fake Civil War uniforms on stage and stuff.
Yeah,
like
the Union Gap.
Yeah, they were so silly.
I just thought your father really hated the Minnesota Twins from the early 90s. Like,
oh my God, that's why I was thinking of Kirby Puckett. I was like, wow, way to mix
early, because I had
like that scene from Woodard. I was like, I love that Joe Montana. It's Joe Montana. It's
yeah. He did not like Gary Puckett.
No, not at all. My mom, what was the one she always said sounds like he's in pain? Was
Joe Cocker.
No, they love Joe Cocker. Yeah. I love Joe Cocker too. He was great. I loved watching him on SNL with John Belushi.
Yeah. Doing like a scream off.
But I was also like really influenced by comedians and actors. Like my dad raised me on, and my mom too. I'm gonna remember. I think it was Neville. Not Aaron Neville. Who the hell was it? I'm gonna remember this. Like
the British.
10 Minutes. No, it was an American guy. It was like, oh my God. No, it was like a soul guy.
Is he from Philly or?
No, he's like I think it's one of the Neville brothers.
Well, there's Aaron Neville, and then there's I can't remember the other brother of the Neville brothers. All I can ever remember is Aaron.
I don't know which one of them. No, I forget. God damn it, Bob, are you listening?
It's not how it works.
Damn it.
But so it sounds like you had a really wide music education.
Oh yeah.
Were your parents musicians at all, or like even amateur musicians?
No, my dad will tell you he plays the radio. My mom, great singing voice. I mean, she'd sing to us growing up all the time. So she always she always said that she wanted me and my sister to have the opportunities to be able to train in music that she didn't. My dad really didn't either. They didn't come from rich families. They came from working class, salt of the earth families. And it was, the baby boomer generation. So it was like they did what they did to get by,
Yeah. Is your sister into music too?
She tried. It was a combination of she wasn't really into it and I was hogging all the instruments. So you do the math.
What'd you start? Did you start on trumpet?
I actually started technically on piano at 7, but I was having flirtations with the violin before and after. 7 years old, I started at around 4, but I was so distractible, I really couldn't do it. I was just annoying the bejesus out of the instructors. So they said, we're going to wait. Going to let them grow up a little bit, let them get, So then they got at me a piano at 7 years old. 2 guys came in dressed up as Santa and an elf. It was like a Christmas deal. They would deliver the piano dressed up like Santa and an elf for the kids. It was actually really cool. Like I thought it was like real. At the time, yeah, I was like, wow, good sell. So I started on the piano. I'm starting to plunk things out by ear, and then I start hogging the piano. And then 9 years old, they basically gave you the option, you can start doing string instruments now, violin or cello, and that will lead to viola and upright bass. Or you can wait a grade and start doing reeds and winds and percussion and, blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, I want to play music now. Like somebody told me once, like, you don't choose music. Music chooses you. And if you feel that bad, just do it. Just go, run with the ball. And I did. I took up violin and then I started jumping ahead in the lesson books, started playing mostly by ear from the cassette tape and then working the stuff out on piano and then working it out on the violin strings. And then I would get scolded the next day because, we're not there yet. I'm like, well, you're not there yet. Yeah. I'm there yet.
That's a story of American education right there. It's like, well, we're not, the rest of us aren't there yet. And there's always 1 or 2 people in the group who are just like, yeah, well, you ain't moving fast enough for me. And not in a pompous way, but just being like, I love it.
And the thing is, the teacher was more than supportive. I mean,
Yeah.
Mr. Morgan was like, he was in the ending, because, at first, I was being a precocious kid at 9 years old. When he started realizing that I was really being serious about it, that's when he was like, yeah. I mean, by the time I got thrown, kicked out of middle school, they were,
You got kicked out of middle school?
Yeah, I got kicked out of public school. They like to word it nice and fancy that I didn't. But, they basically paid for me to get sent to a private preparatory school.
Oh, so they not only removed you from the public school, but said, we'll even pay for him to go to another
That's
school.
how they got away with doing it. They really did a good little number there.
Where'd you end up going after public school?
Hilltop Prep. And that's the place where, a lot of times, I was going crazy as a teenager does. And I wanted to go back to public school because that's where the music programs was and foreign language programs. And we really didn't have that at where I was. I ended up starting my own bands. And I still loved the school, but I was having trouble adjusting, to say the least. And, by the end, I was doing great. And it really helped me, to go where I was going. But I often, even to this day, every now and again, I wonder what would have happened if I, would have gone through with the public schooling system. But I was having a lot of trouble with the grades. And, I wasn't getting help in subjects that, I stunk.
Yeah.
Stunk on ice with math. Great at history, duh. But a literary student nerd. And I love to read, all that crap. But math and me and science me and science were a little bit also butting heads too.
Yeah. So obviously you heard Louis Armstrong at a young age. And
I never knew who he was. That's the thing is when Louis Armstrong first appeared in my life, I remember, like I said, my dad raised me on classic films. I remember seeing Louis Armstrong appearing in classic films.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I remember that voice. He sings that silly, wonderful world song, but hey, he's really cool with that trumpet and singing, hanging around with those people. And I didn't know what was really going on in the movie because I was so young.
Yeah.
But then I see him in the movie High Society where he's singing on the bus and they're doing the High Society Calypso theme song that's written by Cole Porter, and it's basically narrating the whole plot of the movie, which was a remake of the Philadelphia Story with Cary Grant and Jimmy Stewart and Katharine Hepburn. Now they were using Bing and Frank and Grace Kelly, Be Still My Beating Heart, and the great Louis Satchmo Armstrong, and Cole Porter wrote all the lyrics. And it was a hit. He reused some of his already out material, but then he wrote some great new material, and that's where I was like, wow, Louis is killing. And then I was, but still, I'm not I'm getting him, but I'm not he's not he wasn't making that big chiming in me that he was going to make. When I was 14, 15, I started really seeing him in those first few episodes where they're moving into the 20s in Chicago and Harlem and LA and Kansas City and Detroit and Philly, all the jazz. Well, they didn't really touch on all those a lot of those that I just mentioned, but almost all these cities had huge jazz scenes right around here. And we're actually on a street that was right near where a lot of that action was.
Well, yeah, this is the old club across the street on the other side of Broad Bainbridge, right? Didn't there used to be a jazz club?
There used to be a lot of them.
Yeah.
There used to be a lot of black theaters in this area, great
Well, this
ones.
was down below Center City too, so this would have been this would have been the black and the immigrant neighborhoods down here.
We had there was the Standard, which is now a walkway between 11th and 12th on South Street. The plaque's still there, but that used to be a black theater that Ethel Waters was there, Fats, Lewis, Duke. They were all there because they were all cutting records during the day and would come over by night. Great gig. And then you have the Royal, which I sadly think is going to be doomed to become craptominiums. They're going to gut the inside of it. It's probably amazing, but
the Royal's the one right on the other corner, right?
Yeah, right up still on South, but it's up near 15th or 16th, and it's got all the murals and the portals.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah,
with Fats, one mural of Fats, a mural of Bessie. There's a whole bunch of great, some of my favorites on that mural. But you had so many people there, like Eddie Lang, Joe Venuti, Bessie Smith lived here. Eddie Lang, father of jazz guitar, Bing Crosby's personal accompanist, and his compadre, the phenom father of the jazz fiddle, Joe Venuti. They were from the 7th and Fitzwater, that area right around the corner. And supposedly Bessie Smith ran whorehouses with her husband, who was a Philly cop. They ran whorehouses on Cater Street, I think mostly on the west side, though. Right on the other side of Broad. But Louis, though, when I started hearing about, his, what he was doing and his early records, I bought the Ken Burns Jazz soundtrack the moment you could get it. Mm-hmm. My parents got it for me. And I should say, and I was just I wore those discs into basically a pulp. Like they were so scratched beyond all recognition by the end. Just because, when your CD players end up jacking up your CDs at the end. But Louis, to me, just like, I never heard a trumpet played like that. Or a guy like on record singing, especially his early stuff from the 20s and early 30s. And whether it was with a small group or with the orchestras. Because, he really became a big orchestra figure, in the 30s on. But I loved his small group stuff in the 20s. I was like, this guy is so prodigious. Like, he plays figures that were never even thought of, and yet they're so melodic and almost seemingly well planned and well thought out, yet they're just coming from this beautiful ether that is Louis Armstrong's brain, and his scatting and singing and just like breaking all the norms and boundaries of what is known as popular singing back then. And a lot of people didn't know what to make of it. Like, yeah, by the 30s they were eaten out of his hand, but like a lot of people were just like in the beginning like, who is this kid? Like, who's this boy? Oh yeah, this is that Louis Armstrong kid up from New Orleans. He just came over from Chicago, and like, or whatever. It was just like, and that was what was it just really resounded with me. I came home off the bus one day at 15, and my mom's on the phone, and I'm like, being that, brat little 15-year-old. Well, brat part really hasn't changed. But I'm like, Mom, get off the phone. Mom, get off the phone. I need to buy a trumpet. I need you to let me buy a trumpet. So I ended up getting me my first horn at like 15 years old. And luckily, my piano teacher at the time, Joe Benedict, he also played trumpet, so he gave me my first horn lessons. And all I wanted to do was just listen to Louis Armstrong records and just spit back out what I heard for the longest time.
And when you said you had bands when you were in high school, were they jazz bands or were they rock bands?
They were always, I play with a lot of, like jam bands and like different, indie and songwriter bands, and a lot of people will probably double take after hearing that. And, that's the rest is my company secret. You can find out if you ask the right sources, but, good luck finding them. But I, played in mostly, these early, when I started hearing the early jazz of Louis Armstrong and Fats Waller and Duke Ellington, Jelly Roll Morton, Bix Beiderbecke, you name it. I wanted to I kind of moved away from ragtime, needless to say, at that point. I kind of went with oddly enough, the evolution of the American pop idiom. I went from ragtime and solely into jazz, which what happened at the late teens, early 20s,
So you went to college, I imagine, for music.
I did. Was supposed to be a history major, but I backed out at pretty much last minute.
Mm-hmm.
They were...
Did you not, at that point, was music, like when you were in high school and you were digesting Louis Armstrong and all these other guys, was it in the cards you're just like, this is what I'm going to do with my life? Or is it just like, I love this so much, but I should probably go out and figure out what I'm really going to do with my life?
Well, oddly enough, I pretty much knew by the end of high school that I wanted to do something with history, but I really wanted to do something with music.
And here we are.
And so, yeah, it's like I really wanted to do both but I'm very selective in not only my hearing, but what I want to hear sometimes. Oh, yeah, wait a minute. That's what I just said. About what I want to learn, rather, like historically wise. And when I got to Bloomsburg, the orientation was like, you got to do this and this and that and do a thesis on this, this and that. And I'm like, next. We walked back up the hill to the music department. Needless to say, they laughed me out at the entrance exam because I could barely. I failed it miserably. I didn't even know what a key signature really was to write out. I was so
everything had been
trained
by ear from what you're telling me. So, obviously you knew how to read a bit for
yeah,
piano.
my piano teacher used to scold me vehemently all the time. He was a great teacher, but he had every right to scold me. I was that jackass that was just like...
I can just hear it, yeah.
He knew it. Because he's like, Drew, that sounds great, but that's not what's written. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And he's just like, no, it's not. So we would get a little it was always lovable spats, but he always knew when I'm not practicing or practicing the way I'm not supposed to be practicing. But nevertheless, he was always very reinforcing and like very much a rock, a good person to have in my pocket, in my corner.
So how did you end up getting into the music department?
Well, I had to do a theory fundamentals course at Montgomery County Community College over at Monco for the summer, and it was cool. Like I dug it. Like the teacher looked like Jeff Daniels' character from Dumb and Dumber with a beard. We love you, Jeff Daniels. Don't get us wrong, but Either way, this guy looked like Jeff Daniels, and he frizzy hair, like the perfect Harry Dunn hair from Dumb and Dumber. It was perfect. I kept wanting to be like, "Hi, Harry Dunn," and just do the crazy handshake. But it was great. It was a great course. I learned so much that I needed to know, and kind of knew already, but I didn't know the way I needed to know it. So then I went to college. I did my 4 years as a music applied major on trumpet because I really wanted to hone my trumpet skills because the piano school they were like going to be pretty much like the Third Reich on me with like...
It was going to be all classical pretty much.
Yeah, and also like up your ass every bit of the way. Like,
well, was there even a jazz department there?
No, not really.
Because jazz departments really...
And I was glad there wasn't because, I would have had to do like all the stuff that, don't get me wrong, I respect it. But it, to me, is as you aptly name it, the headier side of jazz.
I have a good friend from UArch who refers to it as pointy jazz. Oh, sorry, not what you're drinking.
No, I'm drinking. Pointy jazz.
He calls it pointy jazz.
I like that. What's his name? I'm going to buy him a drink.
His name is Josh. He's an excellent bassist.
What's his last name?
Josh Neal.
Okay, I don't know him. I know a few Joshes, but Josh Matches. I was going to say he sounds like a guy that would call it that.
No.
Either way.
So there was no jazz department, and that makes sense because they're really. I mean, where did you go to? You went to school.
I went to
PA,
Bloomsburg.
Right? Okay.
I went to a beautiful little podunk school.
Yeah, I mean, because there are jazz programs, at Juilliard and Berkeley, but they definitely weren't like kicking over into the smaller.
I almost tried to transfer out at one point to William Patterson, but they didn't accept my because I heard they had a great program and I was a sophomore, so I was like, hell, maybe I can transfer out. Try my hand. I did 2 years at this school. Maybe I'll try. But then I was like, they didn't accept me. Thank God. And B, I was just like, I like it here. Like, I love the town. I love my friends. I like my professors, my advisor, and my trumpet instructor / the head of the department eventually were great guys, and they did let me get away with a whole hell of a lot. Let's just say that. And my advisor, Dr. Oxley, was this music theory genius. Like, there was a few teachers like him and a couple others. I swear to God, they could tell you the pitch of your flatulence in front of you, or your belching. Like, they knew what pitch it was. It was insane. But I love it. Like, I'd be practicing my, pieces, classical pieces in a room. Then all of a sudden I'm like, I think nobody's here. I'm going to practice some of my phrases from like, I'm going to work on some solos, some hot stuff, some early jazz stuff. And all of a sudden I double take because I look in the window and I see Dr. Oxley's like face turning pink, like angry. He's like shaking his head.
Oh gosh.
Opens the door, leans in. He's like, "That's not the concert material," and then shuts the door and leaves. And I'm like,
well, it sounds like it was just contentious enough to be interesting and not too contentious to completely just turn you off from everything entirely.
Oh no, but he taught me so much. I mean, he literally he helped me with voicings, helped me make sure I knew how to call out chords by number rather than because I remember one time, I forget what was happening. He sat me down. He's like, "Tell me these chords as they're happening." I'm like, "Well, that's a B flat, this and B flat." He's like, "Numbers." I'm like, "Oh crap." And he's like, "If you can't call chords and numbers, you're going to be tripping over your tongue at every rehearsal and concert. Yeah. And you're going to trip up everybody." I mean, I took his words as gospel. I mean, he was a genius player of reeds and winds. I mean, just, it was sickening. The man loved going fishing, though, too. I mean, he just loved fishing. It's almost like he lived to fish. It was so funny.
Did you go fishing with him?
I wanted to. Still do. But I always felt like I probably would have annoyed the bejesus out of him with questions.
While fishing,
fishing
doesn't strike me as a particularly like
it's not
talking.
Conducive to question to Q&A.
Not a talking place. No. We couldn't do this while fishing.
No, I mean we could, but we get yelled at. And
we wouldn't get
thrown
any.
at us.
We'd get no fish.
Yes, we'd probably just drink everybody else's beer. And,
so when you got out of college, you ended up. I found this really interesting about you, and it explained a lot to me about just kind of how you got to be the way you are right now as a musician. Is you were?
I thought you were going to say as a human. I'm like, wow.
Well, I mean,
do tell.
We can do that later too. But you sang on steamboats down south.
I did indeed.
So from what I know a little bit of the tourist entertainment world is that's that's a job and a half right there. That's just, it's set after set after set. And
yeah, but it was a great job. I played piano, calliope, a little bit of trumpet, but mostly piano and calliope, which for people who don't know what calliope is a steam-driven steam whistle organ, usually run off the boilers of the locomotive. I mean, of the steamboat.
It's the merry-go-round thing.
Well, yeah, they used them at those as well, but those are more barrel organs.
Mm-hmm.
Those are actually still pipe organs, and most of them. I mean, they used to have them at merry-go-rounds and a lot of fairs, but a lot of these fairs at amusement parks typically have what you call a barrel organ, like Knoebels. If you've ever been to Knoebels in Elysburg, they've got a lot of great old barrel organs there, and they are pretty much run by a piano roll-like mechanism.
Yeah. I know the calliope too is just loud as hell as well.
It's louder than a jet engine and can be heard for a radius of 5 miles. And
that was always the whole point. Is that the carnival would come into town and they'd play the calliope.
Or the steamboats, or packet boat, the showboat as well was really big for using. The showboats really good. They were having minstrel or vaudeville shows on them and all sorts of acts and reviews. So they would use the calliope while going to a lock and dam or coming into town or going in and out of town, and that was fun. It was deafening. I never wore protection because it was just like, you only get to live once.
You're young.
I want to hear that damn thing in all of its glory.
That's how I was when I played drums. I was just like, nope.
And it was fun.
I want it all.
But we went everywhere from Baton Rouge to St. Paul and back. We hit the Cumberland River, Missouri River, Tennessee River, the Yazoo River, the Mississippi, I think I said the Ohio, but
yeah. How long did you do that for?
Whole summer. From around, got on in May, did the Delta Queen for 3 weeks, and then they transferred me to the Mississippi Queen, and I was on there for the rest of the summer.
I imagine you established not even just chops, but just sheer playing endurance at that point.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're on. It's not, there's no like, we're not feeling it yet, we'll go on in 10 more minutes. It's just like, nope, you're on, shows now, get out there. It's a job.
I was told if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late.
And if you're late, you're out.
Yeah,
you're over the side.
If you're late, it's strike 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Late twice, you're fired.
Were you singing too then?
Yep, I was singing, and I was actually getting really big education, a life education, because I was only 20 years old. And I was actually still in college when I did that. It was between it was the summer of 2006. I was between my sophomore and junior year, and they had to it was a big to do, and I wanted two of the guys in there were like second fathers to me, especially the one. They just constantly under his wing, and I was learning new things every day, and I had to practice this, rehearse that, but there was one week I was getting these calcium deposits in my hand from playing, and it was painful by the end of the night. I actually had to get the cruise director to come take a look at it because I didn't know what was wrong with my hand. I never had calcium deposits form up in my hand. And the cruise director, he goes, because he's also a piano player, does his own like shows on the ship. He also did like this really funny Irish sing-along one night every week. And he looks over, he like stuck it with his thumb. He's like, does that hurt? I said, yeah, Jesus Christ, what the hell are you doing that for? And he says, yeah, it's just a calcium deposit. To do that a little bit every day. It hurts, but it'll break it up, or whatever. And he said, yeah, it'll be fine in a couple of days. Just, don't play so hard. Take it a little easy,
How many hours a day were you playing on the boat?
It really depended. Some days we'd be playing, maybe 2 1-hour sets in one day, or sometimes we do a bunch of scattered 1 to 2 or 3 hour sets, or it all depended really. Sometimes we're doing a race. We were racing the Delta Queen or vice versa up to such and such town, and so we're gonna more music, more stuff, more activities. Everybody needs to be on deck. Everybody needs to be doing something. So
yeah.
We were also officers doing lifeboat drill. That was pretty funny. And it was just like you'd hear it's like ding 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 ding, like it's just sounds like you're in like Tugboat Willie or something like that. It's so funny because you hear this steam whistle just bellowing like a car alarm on steroids, and the alarm bells are ringing everywhere. Everybody's got to put life jackets on, get people up to lifeboat stations. And it's just like, really? We just run this damn thing aground, it'll be fine.
Really don't have that much room on one side.
It's just do that, you'll be good.
We'll be good.
I mean, what, we're gonna sink like 20 feet, 50 feet, like. That could be bad.
Yeah, no, you don't need much.
Yeah.
So while you're up there and you're doing this, did you just do this one summer, or did you go back?
One
and do it
summer.
again?
I always wanted to go back, but they literally started having, because they were already having some problems, with the money.
Yeah.
There was some things. I think it would behoove me to not go into detail about some of the funny stuff I did get to see happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like anyone who does any sort of summer tourist job and really get into it, you really you see a different side of people when they're on vacation.
I mean, the Coast Guard was constantly trying to shut us down just because we were steamboats, and they just they were like, these aren't safe, and they were trying to get the Delta Queen always because she had wooden sides and metal hull, but wooden superstructure. But either way, they're trying to save the Delta Queen right now. The American Queen's the only one that's still really running. It's gigantic. It's the biggest one on the in the world as far as riverboats, steam-powered riverboats go. And they scrapped the Mississippi Queen, which broke my heart. I forget when they scrapped it. It was about a few years ago now, but it was the same designers of the QE2 designed the Mississippi Queen. And the Delta Queen, I think they're fighting a little bit of an uphill battle right now. It's stationed in New Orleans. And, it's been all over the place for a while. And it's just a shame. They really I missed that. That boat was so much fun. Woke up every day. You came up through the galley. We all slept below the waterline in these berths. And then we came up. And you go through the engine room and you see the one arm going, junk, like both arms, and then you lean out the one door and you can see the paddle wheel going and Sprite is coming up and this fresh air and ducks going by and you're this high off the water, not even. It's just like the old days. You felt like you were in a movie or something. And then I have to go start the day playing Calliope up on this deck, and then all of a sudden I'm walking down this deck and a bunch of passengers I'm friendly with are like, "Oh, Drew, join us. We're just having breakfast out here on the promenade." It was great. I was gonna eat al fresco breakfast with these people outside. They have the whole mini bar set up, and it was great. We used to visit a different town every day, traveling about 7 miles an hour. And I would write a different entry in my book every day, regardless of what was going on. And man, it was good.
So as you kind of it sounds like you really immersed yourself, not only just in playing music, but in the life and in steamboats being very much of the early 20th century era of
jazz
music.
It was a bringer of jazz.
Yeah.
To me it was you were considered a real jazz musician back in the day. You were a steamboat guy. You know, you were one of the guys that was bringing jazz from the South up to through the Midwest.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense why there's such a connection between New Orleans and Chicago. It never connected with me until just now that would be how a lot of these guys found their way from
Bix
the
and
South.
Lewis met that way, supposedly. When Bix was 12, Lewis was 14. Lewis was traveling on the Streckfus steamboat lines on the Capitol and a couple other ships. I forgot the other ships. The Sydney and the Capitol. And there was another one, a couple other ones. They used to go from New Orleans all the way up to St. Paul and back. And he would, he met up with Bix while they were stopped off in Davenport. They said you could hear Lewis all the way from the river. He said you could hear, when he came up the river, you could hear him.
Yeah. I definitely want to talk about when I see you play live from the few times I have. I mean, not only do you guys musically have your shit together, you guys are all great players, and you all have a great love and respect for the material and the time period.
And sometimes each other.
But
not often.
But you guys, and especially you really embody it as a personality, just in the way you talk. And I mean, most of the time I've heard you talk until now has been on stage. How much of that is personality? When you go out on stage, how much of it is a I don't want to say like a character, but
no, you say it. No,
how much of it is a character, and how much of it is Drew Nugent?
Well, it was funny. I had a very heated debate, as I usually do with some of my sidemen earlier today, and very heated debate. And me and Greg were talking, and we were talking about this potential to have a gig coming up, and they were using the word Dixieland and basically making us be a character and all this and that. And I was like, No.
You guys are more hot jazz than Dixieland.
I mean, because
but
Dixieland was to me a product of the 40s and the 50s, like the revival crap with the swing drummers.
it's more of a ragtime revival than it is hot jazz.
It was just to me it was just a revival of the silly songs that everybody knew back in the 20s and in the new and what people thought everybody was playing in New Orleans. Like everybody's going to play That's a Plenty of Muskrat Ramble and 5 for 2 Eyes of Blue and Ain't She Sweet a million times over. Like no, they're going to play they play the crappiest tunes or the jammiest tunes, and they usually have guys doing the doom 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 doom, like still doing stuff from the 40s 30s swing idiom, not
and then just using the old tunes.
They're not, and they may have the old guys on the front line of the horns. Maybe Willie the Lion Smith on piano, but you're still dealing with like, well, either way, I'm digressing. The Dixieland to me was a slang term from the 20s, and then it became a style or a slang term from the teens, and before that, back to the Civil War. And the, antebellum South and all that crap. So the Dixieland thing to me was a revival movement of the old music because everybody was just getting sick and tired of these big commercial swing bands, and they wanted smaller swinging groups or smaller Dixieland groups. So the character thing though, it's just like I get adamant about not being caricatured or characterized by things because, I mean, I always wanted to be known as a serious musician. Kind of, for me, it's kind of hard to do when you're playing when you're playing almost playing the part of when you literally are playing the part of an anachronism in the 21st century. And to me, I'm just coming at it as an angle is that I love this music beyond love it, obsess over it. I love it. Like it chose me. It's like I said, music chooses you, and certain genres will just grab you, and this genre grabbed me full force. And I love the society bands. I love the hot bands. I love the sweet bands. I love the really obscure novelty shit with guys on ukuleles and Hawaiian steel guitars and singing really weirdly and doing like wackadoo scatting and kazoo instruments. And sorry, that's what you get sitting on a squabbly piano bench here.
Nah, it's fine.
But my dad, like I said, going back to the character part, is because when I go on stage, I realize then and there that, if you're going to be presenting such an off the beaten path music style to the public, doesn't matter whether you love doing this and would do it for free, but you're getting paid big money to do it or not, you have to present it in a way that's not like, hello everybody.
You got to commit.
This is my band and we're going to play this song and I'm going to talk quieter and quieter because I feel really small about myself. No, it's dumb. I mean, I really, there's too many people like that, and it makes me sick. And I'm not going to hold back. I'm sorry. You know who you are. I don't have to say names. But
are you talking about just like rock and popular music, or are you talking more like in the jazz world?
I'm talking about in the jazz world, because there is a dime a dozen of these bands again, and especially because
bands like you.
Yeah, like the old the bands of nostalgic jazz or classic jazz or retro jazz, whatever the hell these kids want to call it.
It's definitely in vogue right now with the whole cocktail craze and speakeasies and all that.
And plus you had this Boardwalk Empire didn't help. I mean,
it
helped, but it didn't help. It's like it's making it a total scenesters trip now.
Yeah.
And as much as I love the gigs it's brought me, I've worked very well under my own steam without the help of this little scenester.
Yeah.
Well,
do you worry that? Well, I mean, not worry, because like you said, you worked before the public's obsession with this particular time period, and you'll continue to work.
It's
after,
like Wynton Marsalis
says.
Yeah. Wynton says, good music is good music. Doesn't matter how old, how new. Mm-hmm. If somebody's putting out some good sounds, people are going to dig it, and they're going to keep coming back for it. Because regardless of if something's in session, something's in swing, or in in the public eye and the fade of the week right now.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean, it may not last at that height of popularity. And frankly, I could give two flying you-know-whats if this goes over.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, I would rather just keep doing what I'm doing, making a decent salary, getting to live in a nice house, with a great roommate, do my thing, have my rehearsals in my basement with my nice beat-up ass old 1929 hotel room piano that sounds like gold, as you will hear. And there's, I don't know, I feel like when you go out on stage, you have to treat it though like this is gonna sell, like this is gonna split wide the hell open, and people are gonna be eating this shit like it's ice cream, and everybody wants half a gallon.
Yeah. Well, you want to show it's not enough just to it's not enough just to play the music faithfully, which obviously you do. It's not enough to even dress in the clothes faithfully, although that is definitely a part of it. It's a whole show. You get a whole thing when you go to see you. It's not just
I would agree with that.
It's not a museum piece either. It's living, it's breathing. Like you guys bring life to it, because
it's
I've
like
seen
discovering a live woolly mammoth and it still wants to play with you. It's like, damn it, you're old, but wow, this is awesome. Yeah, fetch.
Yeah, and people are dancing and stuff like that, and like I think there's still holdovers of people my age and your age, although I'm a little older than you, who still remember the swing revival of the mid to late '90s, and that was more of the big band.
Yeah, but still, it was saying to people, hey, there's still some cool old jiving music out there.
And there were different levels of it too. Like you had like a Brian Setzer, which was like a huge, almost more of a Benny Goodman style thing. But then you had the Squirrel Nut Zippers out of Virginia, who were very much, and people called them Dixieland, but they were much more of a hot jazz. The first time I heard you, I was like, this is Squirrel Nut Zippers, and of all the stuff of that swing era, they were the
Big
band.
Bad Voodoo Daddy, which was more of the.
Well, they were more of a like. Well, those guys were ska bands that saw the writing on the wall, and like Big Bad Voodoo Daddy and
I was
Cherry Poppin' Daddies too were like, they were all like California.
Well, that's the thing is, I was only adding them in because it's like you said, there was multiple genres of this. Like you had the guys like Brian Setzer and Squirrel Nut Zippers, who were very much more like this own entity, lingering towards the classic, yet going forward with their own idea.
Well, the Zippers, you remind me a lot of the Zippers in that you're paying homage to a very specific style and time of music, but again, it's living, it's breathing, it's not a museum piece, and they made it fun. They made it cool for for my generation, who I thought they were fantastic and was very unhappy when they weren't a band anymore. I got a chance to see them live. It was probably 97.
Yeah, I actually know several. I know not several, but a few of the members that were in it, and
some of them have gone on to do some other pretty cool stuff too.
There was the Firecracker Jazz Band, another great band that's down in Asheville, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Their guitar player too put out a couple of records afterwards that were a little more in like kind of a like a
was
50s,
it
John or Jim or something like that.
But nice guy,
a little more Dwayne Eddy-ish though, like a little more country rockabilly.
But you know him, right?
I don't know him personally, but
I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah. Really nice guy, very like soft spoken.
Yeah, and
great touch on the guitar.
Very southern, and he would do after the Zippers. He did at least one record that I remember in college that was a very, very rockabilly style record, and it made a lot of sense. What I loved about that band too was that they all came from different places. You had Rockabilly Guy. You had the woman Kathleen, who was clearly trained vocally to sing like that, and then their drummer was like a DC, like an ex-hardcore DC guy. Like there's pictures of like all of them in period clothing, the dresses, the suits, the hats, and he's in the back with shorts and a Black Flag t-shirt.
Oh my god!
But he could fucking do it though. He was an amazing drummer to watch. He was the first guy I ever saw live do the splash catch, which I overused.
The choke. We also call that the cymbal choke.
The choke, which I overused to death.
Oh no,
I loved it so much.
I honestly think because we thank the 1920s for that, man. They were like half the guys were like it was like all these different cymbals. Like you look at my drummer's kit, he has some of the coolest cymbals and original stuff. His kit dates pretty much from the teens to the 30s, and he's got all these original, the stuff. I mean, he sets it up in a matter of 5 to 10 minutes, but he's got the bells and whistles on that thing. But the cymbal choking techniques back then were so varying, but so hot and so suggestive. And I always call it the ass slap on the end of every tune. They always had that little or something like that.
I always thought it was a great punctuation at the end of the song.
Yep.
And also that you knew it was done.
Yep, exactly. I always say, good game, spank on the ass, it's gone. Gone, safe.
That's great. Do you do any of your own compositions too?
Oh, I do indeed. I started out with writing ragtime pieces when I was, into ragtime, when I was, pretty much preteen, like 12 and 13, 14. And then when I got into the stride music, I was just like, I was busy like learning stride piano and basically just trying to take in all this information and music from Fats Waller, Earl Hines, Jelly Roll Morton, Willie the
You're
Lion
one of the
Smith.
few guys I've ever met who can actually do it. I don't meet too many piano players who either are able to do it or who have gone through the trouble to learn
It was a
stride.
bitch because
that you got to really stretch your hand out.
and I didn't have the guys to like be able to sit there and tell me the shortcuts of like rolling shit if you can't exactly like you know hit that 10th dead on like Fats could do without even thinking about it. Fats could just yawn and sit there and stride his left hand away the whole day through. But some of these guys had smaller digits and had to roll those notes a bit. But, so I had to learn that's what I took from different styles, from guys like Earl Hines, Arthur Schutt, Lenny Hayton, Jelly Roll Morton, Frankie Melrose, Kansas City Frank, and Alex Hill, W.E. Burton, and Jimmy Blythe, like Hubie Blake. I listened to every single one. James P., Donald Lambert, Lucky Roberts. There's so many that are forgotten in the grand scheme of things that were some of the most remarkable piano players. And some of them never got to record. And it was a sin. Same thing with some of the great trumpet players. There was a guy that was named Emmett Hardy, and they said apparently he smoked Louis Armstrong out in 1924 in like a cutting contest at some nightclub in Chicago. But he dies of TB, so he never gets to record. And it was screwed. Like a lot of those guys died really mysterious or just very obvious, like they were juicers and smokers and But to me, it's like that's the other thing. Like you look at like. Why, you have to present this in a certain way. These guys were characters.
Yeah.
They weren't going to be sitting there up on that bandstand, like having some fun, like pulling out flasks, like, hey, you want to do this? Like, take it, give it back. Hey, don't drink too much, asshole. That's my good shit. Like, it's just it's just, they had a rapport, and they were like, they were mugging together, as they called it. And then, like, the band leader always was kind of supposed to be a personality, and when I grew up, I was watching the old vaudevillians that were comedian actors in the first films of sound, like W.C. Fields, William Powell, Jack Benny, George Burns, and especially aside from W.C. Fields, my biggest idol as a stage personality and comedian persona is Mel Brooks.
Mm-hmm. I definitely get that in there, yeah.
I just love how kooky he is and how he'll keep going on tangents, and it's like, it makes me feel a lot better about myself because I'm just as manic.
Well, that's something in your live performance as well, is that you're bringing the humor and you're bringing that fast patter, which was definitely part of it.
You had to keep their attention.
Back in the day, you had to keep people going, as opposed to now, where music is at times this serious, important thing that you have to sit very quietly and watch, and the person who comes up.
Or it's just way too loud, and then you just don't know what's going on.
Or I've seen it too. Like I've gone and seen modern bands that they don't even introduce themselves.
No.
They just come out and play. I saw, to bring more modern, I saw Portishead at the Roseland probably like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell you the name of the band that opened for them. They were outstanding. Never once said their name. And I was standing there in the crowd with my phone trying to be like, well, maybe it's listed in the listing, like who this band is.
Let's check the playbill.
Yeah, let's look at the program, and nothing. And I've never, not to be like, bands these days, but like I've never understood that. I'm like, now there's something to be said for shilling yourself between every single song. That's distracting. But what I like about what you guys do is that it's a show. It's not just a concert. It's a show. It's almost interactive to a point where like you're talking to the audience. You're talking to people. You're including them. And it's not just like, I'm going to sit up here and perform this historical music for you with a capital H.
And you have to sit
and
there
you
and
have
pay
to sit
attention.
there, and this is going to be like school.
Yeah.
Like, just watching you play and hearing you talk in between songs, like on the recording that I gave you.
You're going from the good thing. I thought you were going to say the entitled one.
No.
The entitled version. You're going to sit there and you're going to like it, damn it.
But you even in between the songs on the recording that I did with you guys at the Fleischer, even in just 10 seconds, you're giving this quick little history. It's like, oh, this is a song by so-and-so, made famous by this guy, and these guys played, and then you would say a funny thing about them, and everyone would laugh, and then you would do the song. And I thought that was so great.
Thank you.
That I would walk away from that being like, all right, I learned a little something about 1920s
and it makes the song
jazz.
just ever so much more memorable that you're like, wow, I actually know a little bit of something about this song.
Yeah, or even something about the lyrics. You'd be like, well, he says this, and that's actually a reference to this, that, and this, and here we go.
Exactly.
It's a show, and it's not. You're not precious about the. You're clearly, I don't know if I would use the word precious with you guys, but like you're clearly highly respectful of the material, but not so much to the point that you guys just don't want to have a hell of a lot of fun with it.
No,
too.
exactly. Like that's why, especially like, we pick out like at times we like to pick out really fun tunes like I'm a bear in a lady's boudoir, or who takes care of the caretaker's daughter while the caretaker's busy taking care, like silly fun masher tongue twisters like that, or 47 ginger-headed sailors, or there's the ever infamous song, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. It's the one that I've been blamed for two things. One was writing it, which I didn't. I wish I could say I did. It was written in 1931 by an Englishman named Harry Roy. But I was also blamed for bringing it to Philly. It was a tune called My Girl's Pussy. And it is by far one of the naughtiest numbers. I mean, it very, very wittily makes the references to a cat, but there are certain lines that...
It's like old blues, too, and things like that, where you kind of walk the line of...
and the stuff that got published as opposed to the stuff that didn't. Like, oh, we're going to sell the published version of that blues song, not the... real version that we heard at Joe's Bar the other night.
Double entendre on top of double entendre that you don't even you can't even tell anymore. It's like, what are we still talking about sex, or are we? Oh, okay, we are. All right.
There's some of them got really witty, like borderline to the point where like, wait a minute, is this a chemistry experiment or is it coitus? What the hell's going on?
And you, I don't know much about the guys in your band other than my friend Dan, but like, you find these other people to work with who clearly love and esteem this music as much as you do. And a lot of them are, just from the couple times I've seen you, a lot of them are a good deal older than you.
Yes. And that's the thing is, oddly enough...
How's that work from a dynamic? I mean, do they want to sit here and listen to this kid tell them about 1920s era jazz?
I think for one or two of them, it was a little bit of a rude awakening at first. But the core group is stuck with me, the Wrecking Crew, as we call ourselves.
I like that.
But the Wrecking Crew, I mean, I started the band with Skip 7 years ago on drums. Then Gary followed suit about a year and a half later on tuba and upright bass, and now he's trying to get his bass sax chops up. And then we had Mike Kuhn, one of our banjo guys, and then Greg Wright, who's our band manager. They came in with about 2 years of each other. It's just insane. Like, everybody just kept coming in, and the ones that stuck around were the ones that, and the ones that just kept making it a point to learn more tunes, learn the style, hone their style. And I got on their asses. I said, I don't want to hear no noodling. I want to hear, like, it's like my piano teacher saying to me, I know when you're not listening. I know when you're not practicing. I know when you're not, putting your whole all into this. And the other thing is, I tell them, like, you're not going to show up to my band looking like an idiot. You're going to wear a proper suit and tie. And that's the other thing. Everybody's like, you're so authentic and this and this and that. I'm like, this ain't authenticity here, baby. This is the fact that I was raised with a keen eye for good clothing.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that my mother and father were impeccably dressed always. My mother, eye for the clothes. Father the same way. Well, mother always helpish. But, I was raised, on looking at my father coming home in a nice suit and tie matching real well. And back in the 80s, they were still wearing cufflinks and tie bars. It was 80s does 20s and stuff like that. So, and my dad, I was just like, wow. Like, when I grow up, I get to walk around like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's badass. I want to grow up now. Like, I want to wear suits, and then I started watching the old movies, and I'm noticing all these old musicians, they're wearing, like, nice shoes, and nice tux or a blazer, and these nice trousers that come up to your belly button, and a nice ascot or a bow tie or this. I was just like, what professionalality and decorum, and I'm like, they can go ahead and act like a horse's ass now because they can just get away with it. They look that good.
And that held all the way up into even into the 70s. Like in music, like the Motown guys and all that.
Oh, yeah. And even some of the disco bands, too, even though they were wearing like the powder blue the top tuxes, there's still this like uniformity.
I liked the element of well-cut suits that came back into indie rock for a while, too.
Yes.
And there's I don't know how much up you are on other stuff, but
I try to stay in the know, but the thing is, I often find myself getting disgruntled.
Yeah, but that's just going to happen whether or not you were playing 1920s era jazz or not. You were probably still going to get disgruntled.
Oh yeah, I find plenty of records in my vein that I'm like. But oddly enough, it's like 5 years later, I kind of sort of enjoy the ones I didn't really enjoy 5 years earlier because I actually maybe know something more about the tune that I didn't know before.
Yeah. But in you talking about clothes, it made me think there's a song by this indie rock band called Spoon.
Yes.
And it's called The Fitted Shirt.
I think I actually remember that song.
It's a great song,
Yeah.
and the line in it is, the line I always remember is, one day it'll take and they'll start to make clothes that fit right. Mm-hmm. And the whole song is about his father, about how he's like my father went off to work, he put suit and tie on over a fitted shirt, and that, you know, when he got older he was gonna also put on the fitted shirt. And they're a band that kind of brought, there's still a little sweaty mania to that band, but when they would come on stage, you know, crisp shirts, thin guitar straps, thin ties, you know, well cut pants, nice shoes. Something I always try to instill in my bands too, where it was just like, you know, we don't have to wear 3-piece suits and vests, but, you know,
no, but it's like, as long as
everyone should have a certain element in going on stage that's a little, I hate even to use the word formal, but
a little bit of uniformity.
Uniformity, and something that says, I give a shit enough about how I look in front of you and how I perform in front of you to wear this thing that is not a thing that I wear around the house. You catch me around the house, I'm in soccer shorts and a fish t-shirt. But when I was in a band, I would, you know, well-fitting jeans, nice shoes, a button-down shirt.
Coming for us.
They always are. And to take it as far as you guys do, because you're definitely doing a style of a time.
And then there's some gigs we got to do tuxes, and you know, because we got a big band, and it looks kind of silly when you have a whole big band not wearing like some sort of a uniform suit.
Yeah.
Because then because to me, it was like back in the day, you needed to make sure somebody knew who the leader was.
Well, yeah.
Because he would wear a certain suit.
Yeah, and then everyone else was in the. It's like a wedding party.
Like the bridal
groom
party.
suit, the groom of the bride. Their clothes are more banging than the rest of yours, and the rest of your clothes are pretty banging. But let's not forget what this is about.
Exactly.
I just think it's important to differentiate when looking through. I was at some music conference once that probably spewed 98% bullshit in my ear. But the one thing I took from someone, and it was an offhanded thing. It wasn't like someone schooling me on how to dress, because nobody does that. But someone said, when you and your guys are sitting at the bar before the show starts having a drink, it needs to be clear from across the room that, oh, they're the band.
Exactly. It's like you don't want it to be mistaken.
And when you come off stage, if someone missed you or didn't see you, like when you come off stage, it's just like, that guy's clearly in the band.
Yeah.
So that you're not arguing with a bouncer to get back in because you went outside for a second and be like, no, I'm in the band, but you look like every other schlub who is walking in and out of the club.
It's still funny, though, that, you know, it's still, as much as we want that to work with, like, oh, they'll know we're the band, see this suit and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. I love how many idiots I have to deal with the question of it, just like, are you the band with the band?
Do they ask you if you're the waiter?
Actually,
with all the suits and all that.
Oddly enough, and I've gotten that, like my barber jokes about it all the time. He's like, "Oh, stop wearing those dark suits. You look like one of the Help." Or he's like, or my mom be like, "You look like a damn Undertaker with that black jacket," something like that. But no, like oddly enough, I can honestly almost 100% say that I don't think I've ever been confused for the Help, which is saying something, I guess. I don't know. But I have been asked that dumb question. Are you with the band? I was like, I don't know how you say I'm the band leader without sounding like a fathead. It's really hard to do.
You just be like, I am the band.
I actually do that when I'm drunk. I just say, it's just, I have done that to just josh with people, though. Just be like, I am the band. What about it? And I'm just like, and I'm like, no, I'm just kidding. But seriously, I am the band. What do you want?
Awesome. Well, you want to show me what you can do on that thing?
Sure.
I've heard you're pretty good.
Oh, yeah. They don't listen to all those rumors.
Here, hold up 1 second.
Talk's cheap.
What's it like running the business end of something like that?
I hate it. I wish I had
You're a real
money.
Artist. Yeah.
Are we still rolling?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're rolling.
Good, because people need to hear this shit. Like, I honestly, it's very gratifying to know that people want your freaking candy all the time, you know?
Yeah.
But on the same note, it's just like, people try to chisel you down and be like, oh, well, this would be great exposure.
God.
And I'm like, yeah, that and $1 gets me something off the dollar menu from McDonald's. Other than that, I don't care. Like, this band makes $2,000 easy for the event.
Of course.
Like, the fact that you just asked me to come out for a whole band for $200, I don't know. I'm not trying to sound like an arrogant asshole.
Well, no, but at some point you have to place value,
and you've got guys, you're the boss. Like, you got these guys work for you. You're not going to call these guys up and be like, look, guys, we're going to go and truck all the way out to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Eat,
They make $100 an hour plus the union, basically based off of the original union wages, what guys would make for travel, tolls, lodging, parking, whatever it entails on that trip.
You cover you cover that end of it in these guys, because these guys aren't
union.
union.
My band manager Greg, he's taught me so much. A lot of the guys, the whole band's taught me things as the years have gone along, and we've had to learn about things the hard way. We've gotten screwed over by places like Farmer's Cabinet, this place down in Maryland as well. Like pull the carpet out from under us.
Well, from what I understand, Farmer's Cabinet had a loose relationship with its bills, but
they had a loose relationship with most things.
Yep. It's too bad. It's too bad because the space. Say what you will about the people who ran that place. That space was gorgeous.
That's what we always come back to. Say what you will, but it was the tits.
The guy had an aesthetic touch. Like, he knew how to put these places together. Didn't know how the hell to pay for them, or didn't give a shit about paying for them. But
no, he definitely.
And it's too bad too, because like a place like that in the hands of a more straight business person would just be. It would be huge. It'd be an empire.
I personally wish. I mean, I recently fell into contact with a few people that would have been able to really just come in on that situation, go up to Max Schwartz, and say, "Hey, here's blah 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 blah.
I'll cover it. Just give it to me.
Just give it to me.
Yep.
Let me sign it. It's mine. You go to the bank."
It already had a name. It already had an audience. It already had.
I think they put in the contract though of him selling it that he's not allowed to sell it.
Yeah, it's like you don't get to come back here, but but you don't get to go to jail. So
but you can't come here, but you don't have to go to jail.
You don't have to go to jail. Oh God.
I mean, you can go to jail subsequently.
You can do something else to go to jail.
Yeah, I mean,
I can't help you with that.
Probably will do that, but let's do something at first legitimate. So this is I'm working with the great Peter Evans, who for his retirement project has decided to just give his all and do this collaboratory project with, and he asked me to help him out with it. And we're basically doing it's almost iconoclastic of a project, but it's very awesome. We're taking the old idioms of the songwriting with the old melodies and stride piano and the jazzy backbone of it, and we're taking some modern day spin-offs on our lyric doing. And this is one we wrote fairly in the beginning of our venture. I have troubles memorizing the lyrics because I can memorize lyrics from these old songs on my piano, all the time, like this sheet music and stuff. But comes to my own lyrics, I'm like, wow, like I get hung up on what I wrote. Like, is that good enough? Is that what I really wanted? So this one was one I wrote kind of from personal experience and kind of from made up fictionalized experience. And it's called Trouble Never Looks So Good. And it's about a guy who basically gets off on pissing off his girlfriend, probably soon to be his ex-girlfriend. I love to see you angry. I love to hear you scream. And when you're starting on a tirade, it's more than I ever dreamed. There's fire in your eyes, crimson in your cheeks, and the singer hears the ringer. I'm turned on for weeks and weeks. Dirty dishes in the sink, fresh mud on the ground. Never had the money to pay a bill, never had it, and I never will. I love to see you angry, I love to see you see that I could have listened like I should, but trouble never looks so good. She told him he's a jackass, a loafer and a cheat. Money missing from her purse, nothing in the house to eat. He forgot her at the station, off one lame explanation. He spilled crumbs at the bed, she could have knocked him dead, but he smiled at her and he said,
so vivid and livid as the day he wrecked a new car. Her vocabulary was vivid. Should have never drove to the bar. In the sprocket, to her surprise, she found pennies that were not her size. Her passion was fanned, and then he squoze her hand and said, honey, you don't understand. I love to see you angry. I love to hear you scream. And when you start on a tirade, it's more than I ever dreamed. Fire in your eyes, crimson in your cheeks, and the singer, here's the ringer. I've turned off for weeks and weeks. Oh, dirty dishes in the sink, fresh dog shit on the road. I never had the money to pay a bill. Never ever had it, and I never will. I love to see you angry. I love to see you seethe. I could have listened like I should. The trouble never looks so, trouble never looks so, trouble never looks so good.
For the X's. For the X's.
And all the soon future to be.
Yes.
Awesome. Drew, thank you so much, man.
No, thank you, Dan. Thanks for coming to my basement, my little dungeon abode.
And happy 30th birthday.
Thank you, yes.
You got the...
and thanks for my 30th birthday present. I've been looking forward to hearing this recording from that night.
Yeah, that's set one. That's the better recorded set.
Nice.
I have the other set. You ever want it? It's
I
just
can't wait to hear
just
it.
live mic'd, but I'll get that to you. Awesome, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll be together till the end of time. 25
Well, there you have it. I can't say enough excellent things about Drew Nugent. He's an astoundingly amazing musician, and he's a real character too, just as a dude who talks. I think he would agree with me on that. Drew Nugent is a character. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. I had a great time sitting down with him in his basement and helping be part of his 30th birthday. It was great. He's a great dude, and I'm glad that we got a chance to talk. Go to drewnugent.com and check out everything you need to know about him. You can get there by going to drewnugent.com, or you can go to the Friends and Neighbors page at 25o'clockpod.com. That's right, 25o'clockpod.com. Thought I wasn't going to mention it this episode. Did you? You were wrong. 25o'clockpod.com. That's the website for us here. You can go there, check out the new episode, check out old episodes, read and link and click on anything that has to do with any guest who's ever been on 25o'clockpod.com. No, they were just on 25 o'clock. And they were also on 25o'clockpod.com. Wow, I just like saying it. Anyway, go to 25o'clockpod.com. I said it too many times, and now it means nothing. Learn everything about 25 o'clock. Oh, gosh. I'm so glad that I'm getting a little downtime coming up soon. It's been crazy. I work very hard, not just on the show, but just in my life, at school, at work and all that. Sometimes it starts to get to you, and I just start to lose the plot a little bit. I'm glad I do this show, and I'm glad you all listen to it. Keeping up with this show and keeping a schedule of the show coming out does kind of help center me, and I'm grateful for it, and I'm grateful for all of you who listen. So, yeah, keep doing it. Go to 25o'clockpod.com. There, I said it again. Join the mailing list. I send out a mailing list every couple of weeks. I send out a mailing to the mailing list every couple of weeks. I find it to be heartfelt and thoughtful, and I hope it warms you on a bi-weekly basis. Anyway, enough of that. I'm going to leave you with one more tune from Drew Nugent. He recorded a few for me. This is an instrumental piece, really showcases his stride piano. He sets it up for you. I think it's an old Fats Waller tune. So more music from Drew Nugent here on 25o'clockpod.com. Catch you in a couple of weeks.
There's a tune that I think all the stride piano fanatics will recognize. It was written by that harmful little armful of Harlem, New York City, Mr. Thomas Fats Waller. It is entitled A Handful of Keys.
Thank